Welcome to Logistics Unplugged. My name is Brian Blalock, and I'm your host, and I'm happy to jump in today to all things logistics. So let's pull back the curtain, take a look under the hood, and have a great discussion. It is my pleasure today to be hosting with two rock stars in the industry, and I'll have to tell you a little more about that in a minute. I've got today with me Jonathan Swart, our Senior Director of Specialized Sales. Jonathan, thank you for being here with us today.
Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And right beside me here, I've got Will Baker. Will is the Senior Manager of Specialized Sales. So, guys, it is an absolute privilege. Will, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Brian.
So, absolutely. And it's not every day that you get to host rock stars. No one ever invited me on MTV or anything, so this is as close as I'm going to get. And the reason I say that is Food Logistics just recognized you both as rock stars of the supply chain. So congratulations to both of you. And I won't put you on the spot and make you sing a song, but I feel like there's got to be a reason that you're called rock stars, right?
If anybody's going to sing a song, it's going to be Will.
Yeah, I'm a TNT guy when I go out to karaoke, but I've always thought of myself a bit as a rock star. I guess not necessarily the logistical rock star, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
I like it. Well, we talked about this before, and I always knew I had a career in radio because everyone always tells me I have a face for radio. So
Don't we all? Don't we all?
So, guys, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting into the conversation. Before we get going, we might as well let the audience get to know us a little bit and have a little bit of fun. So, we know the industry that we're in, and some of the folks listening to us might be in the industry. Some of them might have accidentally stumbled across us. So we might as well have a little fun while we're at it. So we are in logistics. And I got to know, we did this in, I think, one of our live events a few months ago. I need to know from each of you, what's your number one trucking song?
Well, you want to take this one, John, first?
I mean, I can go with an easy one and just go Wagon Wheel.
Oh, yeah.
The original version.
See, I was thinking about this before, and I asked some of the team members on the floor, but me personally, I'm going with Papa Love Mama by Garth Brooks. Everybody was telling me it's not a trucking song, but, I mean, the guy literally drives a semi-truck through the front door of their house,
I can't disagree with that because I've never actually heard the song. But
Are you kidding me? Garth Brooks is the greatest entertainer of all time. Name somebody that tops him.
I can't, and I'll give you a quick funny story about that. As you can tell by my follically challenged appearance, I have a very similar hairdo from Garth Brooks, and when my wife and I were dating 30-plus years ago, I was at a restaurant in Douglasville, Georgia, and the waitress asked me for my autograph and thought I was Garth Brooks.
Did you have a cowboy hat on?
I did not have a cowboy hat on, but I did take advantage of the free meal. I did sign something. I don't know if I spelled it right or not, but got a steak out of that. The budget was tighter at the time. So guys, I'm not going to give you mine because I've already done it about 3 or 4 times on that. But, hey.
What is yours?
It'd be Convoy.
Okay.
I just think that's a cool song.
I mean, Roll On by Alabama is a pretty good one, too, and came out the year I was born. So.
That is a good one. And audience, just so you know, we've decided.
1961?
Jonathan, don't laugh because it's dangerously close to my actual. So I got to be careful because I could turn this easily into 30 minutes of trucking songs. And,
that's right.
And I'll close that out real quick with, do you have a trucking movie? Is there a movie with trucking in it that you loved?
That is an easy one. It's over the top. Sylvester Stallone, travels the world, arm wrestling. No?
I have never seen this.
Are you kidding
I
me,
have
Will?
seen that.
No, I have never seen that. But somebody else was talking about that on the floor earlier. I just have never seen Over the Top. I was going to say Black Dog. Patrick Swayze, Randy Travis, and Meatloaf. I mean,
that is quite the combination. Yeah, and there's a few Meatloaf songs we probably could have thrown into the mix there.
That's right. That's right.
I like it. I'm going to cheat and copy my paper from my song. Go with Convoy. So
there's a theme, Brian. There's a theme.
There is a theme. I need to keep my answers short, right? So, guys, I know that a lot of what you do, you cover all areas of logistics, but a lot of what you do is in fresh produce and fresh products. Talk to us a little bit about, and we'll start with you since you're a little closer to me here. Talk to me about some of the complexities of shipping produce.
Yeah, so within produce, obviously it's fresh, right? So a lot of these shippers, they're packaging and cooling the product the same day, which can lead to temperature variances there at the shipper. So you want to make sure that you're aligning with the right providers, right? Especially when we're talking about capacity, late model trailers, tracking, ensuring that they have downloadable units, things that will set you up for success and making sure that you're aligning with carriers, like I was saying, understand the commodities that you're hauling. So just doing that can set you up for a lot of success with produce shipments.
Perfect. And Jonathan, add to that for me. Add to some of those complexities that you deal with in that.
I think to add to what Will is saying, you're dealing with a fresh product. So the need to get it harvested, cooled to the appropriate transit temperature, and out the door with a partner that understands the complexities, right? So we talk about supply and demand in our industry. Typically, everybody goes to the capacity side, right? So that's what drives the market dynamics, especially for North American surface transportation. Now, you add the complexities of a variable supply of the product that you're shipping, and demand varies as well, right? So you're dealing with two different moving targets on either end. And for me, that's always why I've been highly interested in it, because there's a lot of value having a partner that understands the way that those things move, right? So if I understand that, the weather this is a relevant example, is Jalisco has been a little bit subpar. We're going to have lower yields on certain commodities. Well, I'm going to expect that capacity is going to be a little bit softer. Our selection of providers is going to be a little different, balancing that volume within our own internal network to ensure that as volumes increase or there's some variability, that we have enough quality partners in our network to make sure that we're able to deliver the service that the customers are looking for. So we get very creative in the ways that we create a lot of that capacity, ensure that we're communicating out what volumes look like they're going to be doing for that day, for that week. And something Will and I have done over our careers very well, and working together has been a lot of fun over the last 10 years because of that, because Will is not so much the show pony, but the workhorse in this equation. We've had a lot of fun doing it, and I just feel that variability offers a lot of solutions for providers like us in that space.
Yeah, and one thing to add, once the truck is loaded, we're talking about the front end because it's so essential in making sure that these loads go off without a hitch. But once the truck's loaded, our job doesn't stop, right? We have an execution team that's 24/7, ensuring that the truck gets loaded in a timely manner, that it starts making its transit across the country or to the consignee, pushing for on-time delivery. Having these commodities in stock whenever there's sales going on is hugely important to our end customer. While loading the front end of the process is good for results, our job doesn't stop until that load's delivered. So,
yeah, absolutely. And whichever one of you wants to take this, you can. And I know the answer might be a little bit obvious, but let's talk about, for those who don't understand, what happens when that doesn't work, right? What's the negative when things don't go right in fresh delivery?
Loss of sales, claims, upset customers, not only for our direct customers, but our customers' customers, right? A lot of our customers are fulfilling orders for smaller mom and pop locations. And when our deliveries don't happen, at the end of the day, it costs people money.
Mm-hmm. Think about it. You go to the grocery store, you expect to see those commodities in stock, and you expect to be able to buy good quality produce, fruits, vegetables, fresh meat, all that. When they don't have those in stock, you are a upset consumer, right? So, if you have choice of where you buy, you're not going to return to that retail location to buy that. Produce and perishables demand a lot higher service, more frequent deliveries. The inventory rotates very quickly, but it is also the most profitable item for the majority of retailers out there, especially in the food space. So not having that in stock hurts them more ways than just, we don't have it this week, that consumer will be back the next week, right? Same thing in the food service space, restaurants. If I've got a menu planned that includes fresh items and I don't have them for that week, probably not going to get the same return clientele. So when you talk about what happens when you don't make a delivery, right, that means that the customer is usually having to go buy from a wholesaler or somebody else that has that product in stock, and they're going to pay for it, right? So making sure that we're letting those customers know what's going on if there is an issue or delays at the shed or delays in transit. There's been a lot of 3, 4, 5 a.m. calls between Will and I, especially in the early days, about how many repowers do we have and all that. And I remember not that long ago, I think it was like midnight or 2 a.m. or something, we had 9 breakdowns in the same night.
Oh, good grief.
And so Will and I hit the phone tree and started calling everybody and anybody we could wake up to be like, hey, we got to get on the phone. We got to get these repowered. It sticks out in my mind because we successfully repowered all 9 of them, and
that's
so
awesome.
There's some of those challenges that come along with it, but I also view them as opportunities for a place like BlueGrace to add value to our customer supply chain.
I love it. And it's interesting. You made the point that the customer might not come back, and I didn't even think about it. But yeah, all that other stuff that you buy when you go in the grocery store, you can pretty much buy a box of something anywhere. But when you're used to seeing the right fresh products on the shelf, it makes all the difference in the world on where you show up at. And Lord help us if I get to my Thai place and I can't get my mango sticky rice because the mangoes aren't there.
Exactly. Right.
That's a problem.
Mango
for sure.
sticky rice?
It's absolutely delicious.
Okay,
Don't knock it.
Yeah, I gotta look into this.
It's dessert. Anytime I can have fruit in the name of a product and still get to have something that's dessert, that's a win for me, my friend.
I'm looking into that.
So this is a little. I got a little cheat sheet in front of me here to help me, but. One thing I wanted to talk about a little bit with you guys, because you understand this so much, the direction of freight is driven so much by produce seasons. Talk to me a little bit about that seasonality and how that kind of affects where capacity sits in the world. Whichever one of you feels better about jumping on that.
You want to start?
Yeah, so the seasonality of produce definitely affects more refrigerated spot rates. Whenever you're looking at the upcoming season and whenever we're planning or doing refrigerated RFPs, we're definitely taking into account those regions' peak season when we're talking about fresh domestic produce, right? So we want to know when Florida is going to hit, which typically happens between February and May. And then we track the produce opportunity up and down the East Coast, and then it's just a little bit different out west. We go through 2 transition periods in California. So we have a summer and a winter season, which definitely affects the outbound California refrigerated market. And it does have an effect on dry van rates, but I don't think to the extent that produce peak season does have on refrigerated.
Yeah, I think when people think about, oh, hey, you guys are heavily involved in produce, they're like, oh, well, you must be extremely busy from kind of March, April, May, June, July, and then what do you do the rest of the year, right? I think everybody thinks about that summer.
You guys are vacationing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you'll find Will and I at the beach working on our suntans. But I think the misconception is that, well, hey, you guys must be super busy during those summer months when everything is concentrated in Salinas, and people in our space think that that is the only produce season. But maybe not 20 years ago could you go in and buy a pound of fresh strawberries at Costco, but today you can, right? And so it's the kind of advancement of the different growing regions and everything, and I think understanding how those things move around and making sure that we have capacity in the right places and how we create that is extremely important. But those commodities are shipping 12 months a year. Just some periods it might be from central Mexico and Jalisco or Yuma or Salinas. That kind of convergence of all those commodities in Northern California is what creates that big domestic produce feel. And so, we're shipping those commodities, and how we find that capacity and how we place that capacity is extremely important, right? You want to go into, let's just use South Florida because I think it's very relevant, floral peak season, relying on the capacity that exists in that market. You don't want to take providers that are not familiar with those commodities and say, shoot, I got this surge for Valentine's Day or Mother's Day coming up. I got to go chase all these trucks. You want a provider that understands the way that those volumes ebb and flow and has a plan to understand how to create that capacity. I think that's one of the things that we've done extremely well over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, differentiate your spot from your contract, right? And then you operate and you execute those two extremely different. And just to add on, cross-border has definitely changed up the landscape of produce and produce availability. And you're starting to see more customers invest money in southern Texas and in Mexico because you can almost grow product year-round internationally there, and it's right across the border. So your shipping costs remain pretty low.
Yeah, and you look at the supplements from the import, right? As refrigerated technologies come around, there's more produce going on boats than there ever has been. And I thought very interesting this summer, When you talk about trade between the U.S. and Mexico, it's always, well, there's this big imbalance of southbound traveling freight. 5 years ago, it was 7 loaded trailers coming north, only 1 was getting reloaded going back south. And this summer, we actually saw that hit equilibrium to the point where southbound through trailer capacity was extremely difficult to find. That is the first time since I've been in this industry that that's happened. And so it makes me think 5 years from now, picking up a load in Salinas and going to the East Coast is going to be no different of a transaction than picking up in Jalisco and going to the East Coast. So I think that's how quickly we're going to see that supply chain evolve.
I like it. We just had a conversation about this a few weeks ago on the nearshoring, and that plays into exactly what you're talking about. Now, you mentioned technology. I want to pause on that because I think you're almost where I want to go next. But before we do that, we talked about some of the challenges that happen when things go wrong. And I'm not asking you for a it went wrong story, but we are in the story business here. This is a podcast, so we're talking to the folks. Talk to me about some of the craziest stuff you've seen in fresh delivery, and I whichever one is the least embarrassed to say it, just jump in and tell the story.
Well, it's a story that we share a lot, and we'll keep it kind of PG because we could really go down some rabbit holes.
And
with,
I would add,
with transportation stories.
Continue to disagree on.
Yes, we do disagree on how this all happened, but we dealt with a shipper. We're not going to name names, and we had a regular carrier that would load, and it was a fresh load, but it happened to be imported meat. And we would run these loads from Miami up to Atlanta overnight. Truck would get loaded in the afternoon, have to make delivery the following morning. So lo and behold, we give it to the typical carrier. Guy gets loaded and delivers in the morning, and he's marked short on 3 pallets of oxtail. And we're like, wow, what happened, right? So as we're peeling back the onion, we reach out to the shipper, and the shipper shares a picture of this truck supposedly loaded with the oxtail. Still don't believe it was our trailer, but then I asked for the outside picture, and this was a new facility they were operating in, and they claimed that they didn't have a camera on the outside of the building. So I was like, okay. The tracking on the truck has the guy leaving Miami, goes down to Homestead, spends an hour in Homestead, and then travels up to make the delivery. So, John, you can kind of give your opinion of this, but the opinion at this point was that the shipper never loaded it, was my opinion, or that the shipper kept it and was kind of keeping it for themselves or gave it to somebody else.
I do enjoy oxtail.
That is
Just saying.
fairly biased version of the story with some very omittable evidence in there, bud. So
did it stop by Will's house by chance?
Sometimes I wonder with how steadfast he is on this, but so Will talked about our ability to track temperature, right? Downloadable units, the remote, devices that we use, all that kind of stuff. It just so happens when that truck went down to Homestead that there was a less than minor temperature spike. Seal intact, but that is not the only way to get doors off of a trailer. Yeah. Will knows that very well.
Yes.
And I would also add that one of our team members' dad, who is fantastic carrier, been doing it for 30 years, would come back and run some seasonal product for us. One small carrier of the year for us when we were Cousins Logistics pre-BlueGrace, has ran those loads 5 or 6 times and never had that same issue. It's just weird to me. I take that back. He did get a signed short POD a couple times, reported and all that kind of stuff. I think with all of our debate around the subject, we did learn that it was a little bit of a ploy between shipper and receiver to make sure that that product could go out the back door. But I don't think that anybody was super willing to go dive into that until we were able to present everything on it and say, hey, there's just stuff that doesn't add up. Like, we'll take responsibility when it's our issue or a partner's issue, but
carriers are excellent at getting inside a box, even with a seal. I mean, they can unbolt the doors, swing the doors open. It's pretty amazing what they're willing and able to do if they want something in that trailer. So
all of Will's carriers are required to have welded hinges from here on out.
There seems to be a repeating theme in there. Will's name keeps coming in there a lot.
I feel attacked.
Are you a big fan of oxtail? Are you?
Yeah.
Well,
It is
listen,
delicious.
strange things happen. We could probably sit here and do 100 more strange stories, and maybe we'll do that on another episode of this. But always fun. And you know, you did start talking about technology, Jonathan, and you did actually cleverly infuse that into that discussion. So, talk to us about some of the technology that's made fresh shipping a little bit more manageable, and some of the things that you see on the horizon.
Yeah.
And then we'll let you pick it up from there.
So the kind of IoT technology, right, from temp tracking, we're able to get more real-time, multiple data points off of, the temperature inside of a trailer, right? Telematics have come a long way, but when you're talking about products that are a little bit seasonal, there's higher margins for error based on the shipping and receiving practices. We've taken a lot of what we're doing and looked at cold chain as a whole, right? How can we ensure that if it's a grower shipper program, that customer is going to get the chances of that being received in good quality on time, the highest that we possibly can, right? Because nobody necessarily talks about the lost revenue from quality rejections.
Sure.
Cold chain plays a ton into that. So if you have great quality product during peak harvest times and you have subpar cold chain, 9 times out of 10 that product is going to receive no issues. But transitionary growing times, right, when you're moving and product is kind of on the tail end in one and just starting in another, that quality issues that can bleed in at that time, subpar cold chain is going to lead to higher rejections. So we've put a lot of effort into managing and heading off those temperature discrepancies in transit. We have a process built out that if one of those recorders gets flagged and we say, hey, we're getting some out of spec readings, let's check out the trailer, let's make sure that we're got the appropriate set point, all those kinds of things, no impediments, all the way to the end of having a maintenance network that we can recommend 24 hours a day to get a trailer serviced. And if we save 1 or 2 loads throughout the year because of that, it's well worth it to us, right? Everybody knows what they pay for fresh produce at the grocery store, and that's been increasing. And that lost sale and that customer not having that product in stock is more detrimental than just the direct financial impact. It comes all the way back to the consumer. So we've put a lot of effort into making sure that our team is familiar with the commodities, understands how to react to a temperature deviation, and that we're actually involved in monitoring that. So there's programs that we have with devices that go into trailers, monitor that temp. For inbound programs, for outbound programs, it's a little easier because you're dealing with a singular grower shipper. On the inbound retail side, it's important for us to ensure that that receiver, who would be our customer in that scenario, is receiving the best possible quality product that they can from whoever they're buying for. And we view it as some of our responsibility, shared responsibility, in that supply chain and in that cold chain. So,
Great. Will, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I think our ultimate goal is how do we get better quality product to our consignees in the amount of time that is expected, right? At the end of the day, AI technology is helping us differentiate from other providers by giving us real-time info on what MCs are available in the markets in real time, which allows us to really drive down those costs in certain markets. Reefer LTL platforms are starting to pop up. This has always been a challenge in our industry, right? You have a wide range of temps from -20 up to 60 degrees. One temp can't ride with the other, obviously. Right. And then you have ethylene, non-ethylene producing items. So, for example, you can't ride bananas and strawberries together. So it's always been a challenge for
tell
brokers.
people what that means. Jonathan, you and I talked about this before. I don't want to be the dumb guy in the room, but I am the dumb guy in the room. So we'll tell people what that means on the ethylene and what can happen.
Ethylene is a gas that certain fruits, all fruits actually give off ethylene gas, but some more than others. Bananas are one that produce the most ethylene. And what that means is if you put strawberries and bananas in the same room, those berries are going to ripen at a much quicker pace than if the bananas were not in that room. So by separating those commodities, especially in storage and transportation, you're able to extend the life of those goods.
Right. So if you want an avocado to ripen at home, you stick it in a paper bag with a banana, and it'll be ready to go overnight.
Yes.
There's the tip of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah.
So you know, when you think reefer LTL, and especially a lot of the new guys that get involved in the business, that's typically the first opportunities they're picking up are, hey, I got a reefer LTL customer. And it's like, man, we definitely want a solution for that. Right, but it is so difficult. But now through the use of AI technology and online platforms, they're slowly starting to figure it out. Not necessarily me. I'd love to be the person owning that process. It's definitely stuff to look forward to. But more to what John was saying, what we're able to do today is really drive the optisets within refrigerated trailers. Right. We deal with a big client, big produce client. One thing that we start utilizing is optisets on all of their loads, and it's helped, one, reduce claims, quality rejections, and get more product to the consumer at the end of the day, which is our ultimate goal.
Perfect. And guys, I want to make sure we get a couple more quick things in so we can give everybody what they paid the big money for today, and with the two rock stars on the call. So talk to me a little bit, and Jonathan, you start this one. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of the carrier relationships that you guys develop, because I know we joked about the carriers getting the package, we joke about some of those things, but we know that's our lifeblood. And let's talk about those relationships and how to build that out.
I don't know why you called on me for this first. I told you Will is the workhorse.
Get to work, Will.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Quit being a show pony.
I'm letting them down.
Yeah, it's it's really about how do we add value to those providers' networks, right? How do we get them access to freight even that they necessarily wouldn't be able to go out and get themselves, right? And then also get them back to the areas that they're looking for. There's an old adage in temp control, it's produce out and protein back. There was nothing fancy that Will and I came up with when we first started out to build this network. That's really where we started. And what we found is there's some partnerships that we've built over the years that we're able to work with the carrier community and at scale and make sure that they have the ability to get back into those head haul markets, right? It's no secret in produce that sometimes the best spot markets and the highest paying areas are where there's peak harvest, right? So how do we work with those carrier partners to ensure that they're able to place their trucks in those markets and ensure that they're getting the return that space warrants, right? It's risk versus reward. The commodities have a little bit higher touch. There's longer wait times, all those. And so we go through a very stringent vetting process to ensure that those carriers are used to it and they understand the expectations and the driver touch points and all that. And at the end of the day, we're making their lives easier as fleet owners, as fleet managers, dispatchers, that kind of stuff, because they know that we are connected at the customer level and the shed level and the shippers, that their driver is going to get that communication from us. And I think that's a very simple way to add value, but driver retention, driver comfort, managing those expectations in a supply chain that there is longer dwell times on the loading. And when you are loaded, you got to make sure that you're efficiently using your hours of service to get to where you're going. And we make that a little easier for them, right? Through some of the training and knowledge that Will and I have brought to our team that executes that freight, and making sure that the carrier is at the center along with the customer to ensure that we're adding value to what they're doing from a daily basis and that we're easy to work with in that space. And I think that goes unnoticed at times, but you look at some of our strongest carrier partnerships and I can tell you where those started, how we built them, what we add to value both from carrier and customer. And I think people lose sight of that, right? People are, well, it's all rate driven and it's this and it's that. Well, there is some longevity in our space, and to be able to do that and deliver the service customers expect consistently takes some very strong relationships, partnerships, and collaboration with our vendor partners, right? Cross-docks warehouses, motor carriers, all the way from the single owner operator who is going to go into Miami or Hialeah and do a one-pick 24-drop plant load and return some racks, all the way to the 100, 200, 300 fleets that want one pick, one drop, over-the-road team service, right? We have to uncover that need just the same as we would in a customer relationship.
Will, I know you're chomping at the bit to jump in this one, but I'm going to steal it from you. And I'm going to let you be the workhorse that takes us home.
All right.
And I'm going to give you the last piece of our discussion today. What should the folks out there that are on the shipper side, what should they focus on to stay ahead for the rest of the year, stay ahead of the competition, do things right?
Yeah, so if you're talking about being prepared for the seasons, right, the fresh seasons, produce seasons, it's knowing when those are going to happen, right? So I definitely get familiar. Those that fail to plan to fail, right? And I'm big on that. So understand what your customers' expectations are going to be during those peak seasons. Understand what your awards are, what you're committed to, and then what you can do above and beyond your regular scope and week to week, right? Customers expect you to handle 20 or 30% more in peak season. We want to deliver that, right? And it kind of segues on what you were talking about before, right? The importance of carrier relationships. I think we're coming into a time in a market where having a truck is going to be much more important than having a load, right? So making sure you're doing the right things in execution, building those relationships with the carriers, treating them like a customer, right? So these carriers want to know that they're working with people that are investing in their companies, that are going to help them grow their driver pools, that are going to help them grow their trucking company. And that's who we want to align with as BlueGrace, right? Our people are out there hammering those phones as we head into peak seasons. Not only they're chasing down the opportunities for loads, but we are chasing down those carriers who are looking to invest in 2025 and beyond, grow their companies along with us, and grow their market share of not only temp controlled, but all modes and services across the industry.
Perfect finish, Will. And gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for being here today. I enjoyed this. We could probably do this for 4 or 5 hours, but I think Milvio there's going to kick me out if I try to do that. So our producer says it's time. That means it's time. That's a wrap, folks. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you so much giving us your time. Continue to look for us every week. Take care.